That's right. Back at it again, Full Custom Hot Dog, here doing another Blu-ray review. That's right. And today we're going to be talking about a film that I love in a long line of Texas Chainsaw reviews I've been up to recently. For some reason, don't know what compelled me, I ended up buying Texas Chainsaw The Next Generation, which is one that I love, a lot of people hate. And yes, I do like this movie, which of course we'll get into. But first, before we get into that, let's talk about the film itself. This is released by Scream Factory, of course. They release a ton of stuff. What is on the disc? Well, according to the back of the box, we've got The Buzz is Back, an interview with director of photography Levi Isaacs, which isn't bad. He talks about some of his experience because he did work on the original Texas Chainsaw. He was the voice on the radio in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It sounds like he might have done more stuff too, so kind of interesting to hear him talk about some of his background with the original. Also, there's a feature called Marked for Death, an interview with actor Tyler Cohn, who kind of plays the goofier guy here, the guy who you're ready and aching to see kill, which he kind of talked about how you kind of see him come up on screen and you know he's going to die immediately. Also, an interview with the special effects creator, J.M. Logan. You've got behind the scenes footage, still gallery. So I didn't see the behind the scenes footage or still gallery on the disc. And according to Blu-ray.com, they're saying it's not on the disc either. So I don't know if there's something goofy here with the packaging. It also says that we've got two versions of the film, the theatrical cut in HD and the director's cut in standard definition, which yes, that's there, the director's cut. It's one of those cuts where the film is sort of an amalgamation between your regular high definition and then you can see the standard definition stuff that's been weaved in. So it works. I don't mind that kind of stuff, and I kind of like it because it points out what exactly has been inserted into the film. So I don't mind, and it's kind of cool. The cuts are fairly different, mainly because there's one plot point that's been added that I think is crucial to the film. And so did Kim Henkel, the writer-director, which we'll of course be talking about here in a bit. One thing that is on here that is not talked about on the back of the box for some reason is a commentary. And I feel like had I known, I don't know if I knew this or not actually, but I feel like pointing this out would be important to other Chainsaw fans here, because the director's cut has a commentary with Kim Henkel, moderated by Phil Noble Jr., who's from Fangoria. It also has Joe Stevens and Brian Huberman. And one of those guys he was on the set for the whole time and it was capturing it, sort of like the set documentarian. So there's definitely times, it's a pretty good commentary. I don't always say this because normally commentaries are fairly dry, but this one is a total blast. Kim Henkel says some stuff, and then the historian guy goes, "What are you talking about, Kim? You actually said this on the set, and you meant this, and you do this," and just constantly correcting Kim Henkel on things he's trying to say about the movie that he did. And you can tell it kind of drives him nuts. It's kind of a fun commentary. I liked it. And for those of you who love Texas Chainsaw and want to hear everything behind it, that might be worth it for the price of admission alone. So totally a solid release. It doesn't say anything about any kind of restore. The picture quality and the sound quality aren't all the way there. So I'm just going to give it a solid B+. I wish this was a little bit better quality in both scan and audio. It is an enjoyable release regardless due to those special features. I liked the interviews, and of course that commentary makes it full on aces to me. I do really appreciate that. You know what? A-, because I like the commentary that much. If the commentary was a bit more standard, it would be stuck at that B+, but I'm giving it that A-. I feel like it deserves it in my heart of hearts because that commentary is so damn fun and I enjoyed it. And it's probably a commentary I'll watch a few times. I thought it was a total blast. Anyways, let's talk about Texas Chainsaw The Next Generation, the movie itself from 1994. Kind of crazy to think this movie is that old. This movie had a tumultuous release. If you're not familiar, we'll probably dig into some of that. The Texas Chainsaw movies just could never catch a break. And with this one, they really thought they were going to. Kim Henkel stumbled upon having Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger into this movie, and they were kind of about to release it just as those two were becoming huge stars. And then their agents said, no, to the studio that was going to release it. And that studio had to listen to those agents because they're part of the biggest agency network in Hollywood. It had gotten held on to for a few years and then eventually kind of pooped out to a few theaters just so they could say they released it. and fairly an underwhelming reception. But I don't think the film got a release until 1997, just because of all the drama behind the scenes. It's unfortunate. I can't believe you could make a movie and just hit the jackpot and then the studio still screws you. What a goddamn travesty. But anyways, let's talk about what this film's about. According to IMDb, a group of teenagers get into a car crash in the Texas woods on prom night and then wander into an old farmhouse that is home to Leatherface and his insane family of cannibalistic psychopaths. Yes, that is what the film's about. You have Renee Zellweger's character, and her friends are going to prom, and they end up leaving due to some drama, and that takes them to cross paths with Leatherface and his newest family. What's kind of interesting is the film does open with a little explanation, sort of. So I've heard multiple things about this film. I've heard initially that this was Kim Henkel's attempt to get the series back on track, so this was supposed to be a sequel. I then heard it was supposed to be a remake, and it starts off with something that makes it fit in with Texas Chainsaw 1, 2, and 3. Talks about news of a bizarre chainsaw-wielding family. Well, I'll just read it off to you. August 18th, 1973. News of a bizarre chainsaw-wielding family. Reports which were to ignite the world's imagination began to filter out of Central Texas. Regrettably, not one of the family members was ever apprehended for more than 10 years. Nothing further was heard. Wait. Regrettably, not one of the family members was ever apprehended, and for more than 10 years, nothing further was heard. Then, over the next several years, at least 2 minor, yet apparently related incidents were reported. Then again, nothing. For 5 years, long silence. So, obviously that's poking at the prior sequels, saying that those were minor incidents. Regardless of where this belongs in the timeline, I have recently converted in believing that this takes place before Leatherface Texas Chainsaw 3. This film, I think, is very solid on its own. It sort of does achieve this thing that it wants to do of being a remake, reimagining, re-sequel, re-whatever. It's fine. This film stands out because you just have these prom kids who are trying to have a decent night, and then they get screwed up by this crazy, crazy family. And I mentioned Renee Zellweger. She plays the lead. You've also got, like I mentioned earlier, Matthew McConaughey playing Vilmer.
McConaughey as a theologian? Please, that's a stretch. But when he was in Texas 3 with the hydraulic leg, that was for reals, y'all.
Vilmer is an utter psycho. I had been a fan of this movie since the first time I watched it, just because of Matthew McConaughey's performance. If you haven't seen it, if you shirk or shrug at the idea of seeing this movie, then you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're robbing yourself of what's one of Matthew McConaughey's wildest performances. Almost reminds me of something from, if you haven't seen the film Killer Joe that he's in, those feel like they could be the same character for all I know. But what's also interesting to note here too, is that Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey, the film they did to this prior was a great little film called My Boyfriend's Back, directed by Bob Balaban. The effects guy for this movie had also worked on that film, along with one of the other survivors, Tyler Shea Cohn, who plays Barry. Barry worked on that film as well. So you have all this group of people who worked on this cute little horror comedy that Disney was putting together at one point. And then they're in this crazy movie, no longer as extras, but as leads, and just going completely buck wild. And it's kind of a wild ride. It does a lot of things that, to me, make a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie a good one. I think everyone should have a great dinner scene, and this one's dinner scene is fantastic. The house is totally crazy and surreal, with dead bodies just standing like mannequins. There's a wall just covered in keys. There are things that are telling you about the family without having to serve it up to you on a plate, and I love that kind of storytelling, and it excels here. There's things it doesn't do so good, however, and I'm probably going to spoil a little bit of this for you if you haven't seen it. But one of the biggest twists in this film is notorious because people don't understand it. It sounds like Kim Henkel didn't really understand it as well. But a rich man in a black suit and tie comes in, and it seems to be that he's from the Illuminati. We get told that they were potentially behind the Kennedy assassinations and all this kind of stuff. And it just, what and why? And that makes it, to me, more interesting because it's so far out of left field. I like the idea of somebody completely random coming in, almost as if they're actually running the shit. Some people look at it as sort of a metaphor for that man being us, the audience, and that this family is there to appease him. Sort of like a, I don't want to get into spoilers, but like a proto-Cabin in the Woods type of commentary there. But I think he kind of works in this film, but not in a way that makes it connect well to all the other ones. I have heard some people say, oh, it's ridiculous to look at the story for Texas Chainsaw and blah, blah, blah. But that's one thing I like about horror movies. I love when you have a lot of horror movies and they just have a flowing continuity. That's why Nightmare on Elm Street, one of my favorite franchises of all time, because the continuity through them is so damn good, especially compared to so many of the other ones that we get. And Texas Chainsaw is interesting in the way that it almost kind of flows, and it almost flows well. There's so many pieces to that puzzle, and there's still not enough to get me to picture Leatherface taken to the road while carrying Grandpa's body around. Because Leatherface and Grandpa end up in almost all of these, and it's completely bizarre to me. I don't know if he's just slumping him over his shoulder, carrying him around, or what. And yes, Grandpa makes an appearance here, and he is fantastic. A little bit different, but I liked it a lot. With the good and the bad, I think there's a lot that makes this one stand out. It's such a bizarro film, especially because this was shot on a super budget. But overall, I think it's great. I think it's a great piece. This is a very solid release, and I'm glad to have it. I watched it. I haven't watched this release more than once or twice, but I've owned this on DVD, and I've seen it several times. It's just such a crazy movie, and the set design is amazing, and that's what it takes, I think, also to make a great Texas Chainsaw movie, is that killer set design. That helps to make it, that helps really bring this story to life. I really hope the next Texas Chainsaw is going to be good. I'm a little nervous because they're doing one of those Halloween things where they're doing another direct sequel to it. I don't even know what's worse at this point. Texas Chainsaw may have one of the worst timelines in the horror genre. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd be curious to know what could be potentially worse. But anyways, enough rambling about Texas Chainsaw, as I like to do, as I could always do. Also, it's worth noting, Leatherface is probably my least favorite here. Although he does have some funny moments. He does he goes full on drag, which I think is kind of cool. I like the way he sort of has that inner struggle. I talked about this before on some of my other reviews. I like that he struggles with this identity. I think that makes him interesting, more than just being a killer, that he has some kind of psychological issues that he's dealing with and trying to iron out or work out. And obviously it's happening in the least healthy way. Anyways, enough rambling about Texas Chainsaw. I'm your host, Full Custom Hot Dog. You can follow me on Twitter. It's Full Custom Hot Dog without the last O, because that's just too long for Twitter. So thank you all for watching, and until next time. If you like what you see,
I love what I see.
Make sure to hit that subscribe button and the bell for notifications so you can watch whatever comes next. And if you like the music you hear, you can follow me on SoundCloud and Spotify. Check the description for links.